Where'd the other go?
No, we,
So it's,
why don't you, we have a minute or two, so-
well, by the time he
Rich.
goes
Yeah,
ledge,
go ahead.
so. Okay, let's go ahead. We're going to begin the March 24th meeting, regular meeting of the Sewer Authority Midcoastside. And have roll call, please.
Director Kowalczyk,
Here.
Director Alfano,
Here.
Chair Warren,
What?
I'm
No,
sorry,
it's okay. Here.
Hey, look, just a
Chair Harvey,
Yeah, here.
Director Boyd,
Here.
Director Warren,
Present.
Director Lohman.
He'll be here shortly. Let's go ahead and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any public comment from, let's go ahead with audience that's not on the agenda. Any public comment?
Come on, Kevin, say something.
I'll pass.
Okay. If not, any public comment or communication from the board or staff? Okay, if not, we'll go ahead and go with the consent agenda.
I'm kind of gonna demolish the consent agenda this time. I have a correction to one of the minutes and a correction to, let's see, which item is that gonna be? I guess collection system data.
Okay, which items do you want to hold?
Okay, so 3A, 3B, D, and I think we need to look at the flow report again, so 3BA.
All right, so other than those items, do we have a motion?
So moved.
So to be clear, that's 3BB, 3BC, and 3C. Right?
No,
You mean,
no.
okay,
3 BC.
3BC.
And 3B.
I said 3BB,
Why don't we just-
3BC.
Let him do his thing and then just do them all together.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
3 BD.
All right, go ahead, Leonard.
Let's do BC.
Yeah, why don't you go
I
ahead.
agree with you, Scott.
Why don't you go ahead?
That wasn't-
Go ahead and do your correction for the minutes.
Okay, on the last page of the minutes section, so this is, the workshop, I think. Yeah, the March 17th minutes on the last page. Right above the line, new business, it says Director Warren requested a monthly life statement be provided to the board in a detailed format. That doesn't really reflect my request, which is that that we get a detail itemizing what the money that we happen to keep in LAIF is allocated to. So that's basically our reserves, so I want the breakdown of what the reserve money is that happens to be in LAIF.
And Director Warren will fix that in the minutes for the file. We actually have prepared that, which was
Okay.
for the manager's
Yeah,
report.
so I wanted to make sure the minutes reflect what the request actually was.
Okay.
On the flow report, if you look at the summary section, which is at the bottom of page 12, and I like the page numbers, although I would start them over at each agenda item, but having good page numbers is useful. So the summary at the bottom of page 12.
Yeah, these are cool.
Did you look at the packet before this meeting?
Was I supposed to?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, you had a point,
Go ahead, Leonard.
pretty sure. I know it's in there somewhere.
Okay, well, if you look at the front page, this is showing the same creep in flow percentages, as page 11 first, that we made a great big issue out of, a year ago? And, I mean, Who here believes that Half Moon Bay's flow is really down to 46%? Yeah, there's a shock.
So in looking at the, just looking at the graph,
Oh, let me say one more thing
Okay.
first. The fact that both Granadas and Monteras are up and Half Moon Bay's is down leads me to the conclusion that the Half Moon Bay number is bogus.
Or yours are bogus.
it's, I think it raises an interesting question given our recent history. Looking at the graph, just kind of eyeballing it for the month of February, and it's only 1 month's data, but these numbers aren't these lower than, I mean, we've been kind of trending down overall over the past decade, just as people use less water. So during the dry spells, we're seeing things, you know, drifting down a bit, which is good, showing a lot of conservation. So where I see the relative percentages changing in any noticeable ways on the rain events. If you look at the rain event, several days starting around the 5th and running through about the 10th, you can see the percentages fiddle around there a little bit, like especially on the 6th, Granada jumped up a little bit more than the others did, and so that percentage shifts. I'm seeing sensitivity to rain events, and I would be reluctant to try to draw this conclusion from the combination of the dry events and the rain events.
But look at the
And
10th.
I would encourage separating out those two sets of data and seeing where those sit on the historical background and overlay those against the previous years, same months. But keeping in mind that wet weather and dry weather are gonna give you a whole different profile.
Well, of course.
So, I think you raised an interesting question. I think what it ought to lead to is some looking at the numbers, and then probably a question to staff to see whether or not there's anything going on with our meters that might suggest some drift or some change. I'd like to make sure that we keep what we do on this as actionable as possible, rather than spending too much time worrying about it. Let's do something early before, I mean, just a few months ago, the numbers were right where we thought they should be. So let's get on this quickly and see if this is just some sensitivity because Granada got a little more rain than the others. You know, right here, we only have the rain gauge. Is this the plant rain gauge?
Plant and the Alta Vista rain gauge for Montero. And we're trying something new for Granada. We haven't.
So there's only one line for rain, so.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, on the graph it is.
Oh, but in the table, sure. So we could differentiate, well, yeah, if you look at, like February 2nd, Montero got, not twice, but quite a lot more rain than Portola did
Where are you looking to see that?
on the table.
That's not Portola.
So it says rain Portola.
It's Granada is a meter that we're able to tap into that's a little further north, closer to the airport.
Okay, so it's 3 different gauges,
Yes.
right? So you can see it rained much more heavily to the north than it did to the south that day. We got twice in Montero what the plant did.
That's typical.
And so when we look at that, I fully expect to see Montero's number up for
Okay.
the periods where we see that kind of distribution. So
All right, wait.
I'd just like to make sure we get into the numbers.
I think we all, if I remember correctly, also, there is no gauge that measures El Granada. We are a calculation based on everybody else's numbers all the time. So there is no meter that says,
Wow.
here's what Granada's using specifically.
The only one that's directly metered is Montero. Both Granada and Half Moon Bay are computed.
Okay, but it means it's a calculation all the time. There's nothing that measures our flow like Montero has in their flow. With the amount of time we spend on this every single year, you know, our flows are going up, and yes, we had 2 houses constructed in the last 5 years or something like that.
Oh, that did-
What?
That's probably.
It's probably those 2 houses.
Well, don't forget about the
Find them
empty
and
hotel.
stop them.
Yeah, what I think I'd like to propose at some time for discussion is just to throw this whole stupid system out and say, 50, 30, 20 or something, instead of going through these calculations to push the number up a tenth one month, down a month, down a tenth the next month, it's just, and because of all these meter flows, I don't know how much time, effort, and money we've spent playing with this silly calculation, but why not, if for budgeting purposes and everything else, why not just go 50, 30, 20 or 49 or something, and just get rid of the whole issue once and for all, and quit saying, this whole thing based on flow and therefore everything. So
You
that's all I'm gonna
want
say.
that as an agenda item, Rick?
Yeah.
Okay,
I
well,
think
can we
that'd
do
be
that?
good.
Wait, hold on.
Isn't
Alan?
that, the one study we're gonna do, isn't that gonna update the flows for us too?
No, that's looking at the hydraulic model of the.
I thought one of the studies was gonna look at updating the flows. No?
FMA's doing some flow work,
They're
monitoring.
looking at the projected peak flow through the system in a design storm.
So it's really nothing about normal flow, okay, that's fine.
Well, you would have average flow data, but Tony has that, and we can do that, the analysis that you're talking about, we can do with the data we have. Because I think we should look at the gallons of flow, not necessarily the percentage. Percentage doesn't really tell the story, because it's relative, one agency relative to the other. We should see how many, gallons year over year, the flow
Raw
changes. We
numbers.
shouldn't see a huge difference. And then Scott has a point, if it rains more in the north, then there's more I&I, and the percentage from the north for that month, for that period, is
Right.
higher, but averaged across the year, there may not be a difference.
Okay, well, one more point, Ryder, then we'll go on with
Okay,
the agenda
We've
item.
discussed this before, and I thought staff agreed to make the change, but it hasn't been done, which is on this graph to also show the previous year on the same chart, and maybe you could do that with, a different symbol for the data points and maybe a dashed line for the colored lines or something. I'm just suggesting, it's up to you to technically decide how to do it, but one suggestion is, use the same color scheme, but a different line format, a different data point format.
Because you want all of these on.
Basically, the previous year overlaid onto the same graph so that we can instantly compare. The other thing, and this is probably more work, but if you could somehow, and I'm not sure exactly what I have in mind right now, but somehow report on what the flow percentages are discarding the data starting at a rain event and until the rain event is tapered down to more or less nothing, so that we can try and compare the non-rain flows. If that's something you can do, I think that might be illuminating.
It might be a little tougher.
Yeah.
As the ground saturates, you're gonna have longer periods of I&I.
Right,
It's gonna be.
but this year
You can
we
look
had a
at
lot
it,
of
certainly.
dry time, so I think this year might be reasonably easy for you to do that. So I think that'll be illuminating if it's possible to get that
Right,
comparison.
so we'll have, in the next couple of meetings, at some point when you think it's appropriate, we'll put that on the agenda. Yeah, Leonard, anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay, so do we have a motion?
So moved to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, so the consent agenda passes. We're gonna go on and move up number 5, new business, and do that next. Review and receive comments on draft personnel policy handbook.
Yeah, so in front of you, under item 5, is a draft personnel policy handbook. This is a handbook that was developed by Wiley Price Radulovich and by Suzanne Price and her colleague, Joan Q. Newman. And so Joan is here today to give you a brief overview of the document and to answer questions. What we essentially did is we took the existing policies, which were quite old, and the MOU, and information that is just standard practice but not necessarily memorialized, and put all of that into a document so that it's all in one place. And so there's an easy reference for how personnel issues should be handled within the district. There's one change that we made to the policies, and if there's more than one, let me know, but the one that really stands out to me is that currently we don't have a cap on sick leave. So employees accrue sick leave to infinity. And apparently, this was put in place some time ago. When an employee retires, they can convert that sick leave to years of service. And that was not a practice that WPR had seen elsewhere. So in this policy right now, there is a cap on sick leave similar to caps on other leaves. If the board, wishes for this policy to not include that, that's fine. It's just in there for discussion only, just to reflect what is in place in other places. And then, are there any other major differences?
Off the top of my head, I can't remember any major differences, but anyways, so hello everyone. I'm Joan Pugh Newman, and I'm here taking Suzanne Price's place while she is off dealing with family issues for about a month. So it's nice to meet you all, and thank you for having me here.
Would you mind standing up at the podium?
Not at all, not at all.
Thank you.
And so Suzanne and I have been working closely with Jeanette and Vivian on preparing these draft policies for your review. Basically, the reason that we're doing this is because the policies that we had in place really haven't been reviewed, I think, since 1986, which is a long time. And the laws have changed and times have changed, and so we thought it was appropriate, along with your staff, to bring us into the new century, and to because some policies are required by employers, are required of employers to have in place. And some policies that were in place weren't really enforced. Anyway, we wanted to have something uniform, consistent, but succinct, recognizing that this is not large, so we wanted to have something tailored for Sam. And so what we've done is include in your packet the draft policies that we put together. If the board could take a look at them within the next month, and at the next board meeting come back with questions, concerns, proposed revisions, then what we'd like to do is incorporate those revisions that we all agree on and have a draft to present to the union for purposes of meeting and conferring if they wish to do so. And with the ultimate goal then being having a set of policies, enforceable, consistent policies in place by late May, early June. That's the thought. And one other thing that I just wanted to mention is Jeanette Tracy and Tony Pullen, who are here, have expressed some interest also in providing their input to the board as you consider these policies. It's not necessarily customary for employees to provide input into policies, but this is a little bit different because Jeanette and Tony are basically the only non-represented employees, along with the general manager, who has his or her contract and is working under a contract. And Jeanette and Tony are longtime employees, so I would say it would be appropriate to hear what they have to say, to hear their input into these policies before we present a draft to the union.
So we would have them contact the chair or all the board members?
I hadn't really thought about how we would put in place Tony and Jeanette providing input to the board. Perhaps it could come through Vivian, and then
I'm thinking, we could collect all the comments and then send them back out to the board, so you have all of your comments and staff's comments to consider at a future meeting.
Okay, great. Okay.
that sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
That's all I had, unless there are questions.
I just have one question. On the performance evaluations,
Yes.
it said if one's not completed, then it's kind of sounds like you're going. I
Okay,
didn't
let me
quite
make
follow
sure.
that.
Let me make sure that we are all on the same page, quite
Let me
literally.
find the page for you here.
85.
85.
Page 5.
80.
Throwing around the
85
page
of them.
numbers.
Page 3.
Oh, page 3. Looking at section 4.
Yeah, the bottom, failure to at any time prepare a performance evaluation for an employee, including the probationary period, does not entitle the employee to continued employment at SAM.
Okay, what we're talking about here is Even if many times supervisors get very busy and get too busy to do a performance evaluation when they're supposed to do that. Just because a supervisor doesn't have time to prepare a performance evaluation when he or she is supposed to, doesn't mean any promise, any extra promise goes out to the employee. So for example, if you had an employee in a probationary period and the supervisor neglected to provide a timely probationary evaluation, that doesn't mean that that changes the employee from probationary into regular just because the performance review wasn't done timely. So that's all that means, is that if a performance evaluation is not done timely, that doesn't change really anything for the employee. It simply means that it needs to be done at the next appropriate moment. But it doesn't change the employment relationship.
Can I suggest that the language in the document say what you just said,
Yeah, I was
rather
thinking
than
the
what it
same
currently
thing.
says?
Absolutely, absolutely, and this is exactly why we do this, to make sure that things are clear, and if they're not clear, you are a wonderful audience then to let us know exactly that.
When I read this, it's like, okay, if they don't do an evaluation, I'm fired.
That's kind of the way it reads.
It doesn't say that.
Right,
No,
and
it's
we
the way
wouldn't want to do that, so
Yeah.
let's see if we can clear that one up.
Yeah,
Good.
that was the only one I had.
Okay, Robin?
I would like to suggest that any directors who have comments right now on the sick leave thing, state them now, without, without prejudice to bringing them up later. But I gotta say, I've worked for a number of places in my career, because early in my career I switched jobs every year. And I have never heard of, let alone worked at, a company that allowed unlimited accrual of sick leave. This has got to be the only organization I've ever heard of that does that. So to me, that's not acceptable. That has to be changed.
And Vivian, I'm sorry,
I'm-
cap
I'm
is
not
at 12
finished.
days?
The cap that's being recommended here is, what do we recommend?
It is
12
12 days is the recommendation.
Okay.
What's that in terms of annual accrual rate?
This is at the rate of 8 hours, so it would be like a work day per month.
Yeah, so it's a
So
year's
so
worth
it's
of
a year and a half?
accrual. A year's worth of
Uh,
accrual,
Yeah.
right?
It's 12 days would be a year's worth of accrual, yes. That's the,
Yeah, I think that's what we should be targeting. I mean, my current job, which is very typical in private industry, it rolls over to 0 at the beginning of every year, which I think is ridiculous, but the fact remains that Sam's current policy is also ridiculous.
Okay, so any other comments about that, or should we just present your comments?
Sorry, I have a question. So on sick leave, accrual and payment, I'm seeing up to a maximum of 300 sick leave
Oh,
hours.
yeah, we
Which
have
page are you on
300
now?
hours, so that's more than 12 days.
right,
That's
but
7
this is a proposed maximum accrual. So if we're talking about you can accrue up to 12 days per year, but what if you don't use them?
Mhm.
So then you have 12
That's
days,
right.
the maximum,
So
okay,
this is
so
the cap.
this is a
I
proposed.
thought we just heard that
No,
was,
That was incorrect.
okay. So instead of, okay, so we were talking about the accrual rate, and the cap that you're proposing is 300.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't
Yes.
understand that.
Sorry, so this
That's
would be
why-
a
that's why I
maximum of
clarified.
12 days accrued.
No,
per
I need to clarify my comments. The maximum accrual, you should basically stop accruing sick leave at about a year and a half max.
Okay, and
And the 300 is the number that's totally ridiculous, and I didn't understand your response just now. So
So that's,
what I'm proposing is that the maximum sick leave accrual be a year and a half's worth of, okay, the first problem is I think the word accrue in the first sentence probably should be earn or something, but the bottom line is you get sick leave at a certain rate, and you shouldn't be able to convert it into anything else, because every other organization I've ever heard of, it's use it or lose it on sick leave, except for some minimal rollover allowance. So any provision at all for converting it into, however you stated it at the podium, now I'm not seeing it here.
Currently, it's converted to years of employment
Okay,
upon
that,
retirement.
as far as I'm concerned, that has to go also.
so, okay, so the rest of us would like to say something.
Okay, any other comments? You want to discuss this further?
So let me just note
Scott?
that 300 sick leave hours is 37 and a half days. And some sick leave is used for things like doctor's appointments and caring for other family members potentially. So just understanding, we're talking about at 300, we're talking about 5 weeks, a little over 5 weeks. And in the case of a serious illness, that's gonna go very, very quickly. So my initial take on it is 300. It sounds like a lot, but it's really not. And I've been in that situation where I've needed it before, so I'm definitely sympathetic to the notion that we don't want that number to be too small. I do think there's a cap, because, I mean, preparation for catastrophic, that's the thinking I think we ought to be doing, not, if we want to accrue benefits for tenure and seniority and all that, then I think we should do that more directly.
But catastrophic illness is covered under long-term disability.
I understand.
Not sick
A month
leave.
and a half, or a month and a week is not.
Okay, but I'm looking at private industry, and people, the general citizens who are not involved in
I'm
government have a
sorry.
really bad attitude
I
toward
think-
government.
I think, I heard you. I had my say too. I'm not interested in arguing right now. I think what we're doing is providing.
All right.
Okay, let's go on. Leonard, you made your point. That's, any other comments? If not,
Let me state it, and very succinctly, in different words, which is that a government agency's policy should not be any more enriching than working for private industry, and this is. We need to realign benefits with private industry.
okay. All right, Leonard, thank you. So the procedure for the board members, will compile their comments and then present them at the next meeting?
That would be
And
helpful.
then we'll discuss them then, so it'll be an agenda item. All right,
Or
so,
if you'd like to provide them to me in advance, I can compile them all so that
Okay.
everyone can see
Yes.
everyone else's comments.
that'd be fine with me, so we'll give them a meeting in advance, is that all right? All right. All right, I have a person from the audience wants to comment. Catherine?
Thank you.
Oh, sure. Oh, this is.
Catherine Slater Carter from Montero. As a private employer, we find, we just had an instance, Leonard, in which our young manager had cancer. She needed about 3 months of sick leave. We gave it to her. This is at McDonald's, guys. I think 5.5 weeks is 300 hours is a good time period. Any more young families, dads, moms have to take time for their kids, their parents. You have doctor's visits, you have other health issues that you use health time for, sick leave for. I think 300 hours is a fair and adequate time. We also have a policy that we ask our managers to take their vacations every year. Because we don't want vacations to accrue too much, and it also is very important for us to be able to have our managers, it allows us to check their performance, to make sure our training levels are up to date and with other folks, and make sure we have a crew that can step in for each other. So I think 300 hours is good for the sick leave, and maybe you just don't want a huge amount of vacation accruing. Maybe you only want 6 weeks of vacation accruing too. But it is important to make sure that people are taking their vacation. I think this is a great step forward. I look forward to reading it.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Are employees covered under, I guess it's California program, long-term disability? If somebody has to be out on medical for 6 months, they're basically paid by the state?
State law.
Okay. Then all the stuff about accrued sick leave is not relevant to me, because they're covered under long-term disability.
I mean, the trouble with the state benefits is you have to fill out, you have to fill out 25,000 reams of paperwork. And it's very complicated, and it's good to have sick time to fall back on when you need it, so you don't have to make it super complicated and stressful. So I agree. Anything else?
And I did want to point out also that the draft policies do propose a cap on vacation, and that may have already existed in practice, as it were. So, but I didn't have anything else that I necessarily wanted to point out to all of you, and I'm sure that there will be other policies in here that maybe are not the model of clarity, and we want to make sure that they are. And if other people have questions or concerns, we can definitely address those. Vivian, did you have anything?
And so part of the benefit of compiling all the comments is that a lot of this came from, or not a lot of it, some of it came from the MOU, and some came from our other policies. And so if there are questions and they conflict, or maybe they're not consistent with the MOU, then we can bring that up as part of the discussion.
Maybe,
Board's consideration.
maybe we should get a Word version of it so we can insert our comments into, directly into the document and send it back.
We can certainly send out
Okay.
a Word version. Vivian, shall I send it to you then?
Sure.
Okay, that'd be great. Okay, any other comments?
So this will apply to both exempt and hourly?
And I'm sorry, the first part of that
This,
question?
this will apply to both, all employees at SAM?
This applies to all employees at SAM, yes. And
Sure.
with the understanding that certainly for the represented employees who are covered by the MOU, if there's something that would be, if there would be a conflict, the MOU would govern in that case. But this is intended to apply to all employees, and this has some policies and some information that is not in the MOU.
I'm just curious if at some point you would give it to the union rep and say, hey, here's our draft, do you see any problem? It'd be
Yes.
nice to know ahead of time that they're like, we looked through it, we're fine, or gee,
Yeah.
we don't agree with something. So
That is-
that later, if we refer to it, we've had this conversation and everybody's aware of it.
Absolutely, that's what we hope to do, is when we get a draft where that all the board members have had a chance to have their input and everybody is agreed that this is how the draft is going to look going forward, that then would be the draft that we would propose presenting to the union to find out, would you like to discuss this, would you like to meet and confer on this?
Okay, good.
Thank you. I have a general comment. So I appreciate both Director Boyd, Director Ward sharing your perspectives, and I think we'll find some common ground among there that's going to work for us, and particularly alignment with the private sector. I think that's helpful. My comment, substance, is more about our policy, our process for taking public comment. I know at the City of Half Moon Bay, we typically take that at the front end of the meeting, and it struck me that I don't want to find our directors in a combative dialogue with the public. Leonard, I think you may recall that statement, and I would suggest, if we don't have a policy, maybe we set a policy at some future date for how we take public comment.
Okay, sure.
Are you saying that members of the public get to comment on each item as that
Any-
item happens?
Any item they want to comment on, but I found that we take them at the front of the meeting, or they submit cards at the beginning of the meeting, and then we can take them at any point during the meeting. But what we avoid is, oh, I'm irritated by that comment, I'm gonna jump in there and start a debate, and it can get a little unpleasant.
I think our past practice has been public comment at the start of an item.
Mhm.
Pretty much anybody wants to step up.
Yeah,
which-
But
yeah,
but
just put it out in the
absolutely,
middle
we
of an
shouldn't-
item.
But absolutely, we shouldn't be arguing with people at the podium.
Yeah.
Thank you, that's my point.
All right, so,
Okay.
so we're agreed that we can take public comment, get the cards at the beginning of the item.
Yeah.
That's fine. All right, so anything else?
I-
Right, yeah.
I think it's still appropriate for the order on each item to be staff reports, questions from the directors, public comment, and then discussion by the directors.
Yeah, so normally, once you start the board discussion, the public comment's over with.
All right,
Yeah, that's normal.
okay. All right,
Thank you.
all right, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right, so let's go ahead on back to number 4, old business. A, receive synopsis of funding priorities from March 17, 2014 budget workshop.
The staff report for item 4A summarizes in additional detail the discussion that occurred at the March 17th board budget workshop. The discussion is also summarized in the minutes that were approved under the consent agenda. I can go through these items, or if you've had a chance to read them. The reason why the items are in here is because the next step is for this board to forward the budget to its members for consideration. And at this time, concluding the March 17th workshop, my impression was that we're ready to forward the general budget, the general administrative budget, but there was still some discussion on the replacement items that needs to get finalized. And so I think at this point, to follow the JPA, we would, staff would recommend that the discussion on the general administrative budget has concluded based on the discussion at the last workshop and is ready to be sent out to members for consideration.
Well, so you, Vivian, you were going, you said that you would be, you were gonna go, you would review these items, on agenda item 4A then?
Yeah, do you want me to review
Did
each?
you do that, please?
Yes, I will, yes, I will. So in summary, the items that were discussed, there was a discussion on flow, and the relative flows were presented, and in summary, the Granada Sanitary District flows increased over the past year as compared to Half Moon Bay and Montera flows. And the flows from 2013, the percentage, relative percentage of flows will be what is used to allocate the budget for 2014-15. The request from the board was that in future budget presentations, the discussion of flow come first, followed by the discussion of budget numbers. Under the administrative budget was essentially kept flat, other than known increases for chemicals, power, insurance, salaries, that sort of thing. And at the March 17th workshop, there were no recommended changes to the administrative budget. The treatment budget was presented with a significant increase. That increase was removed for discussion as a separate equipment replacement discussion. So when the increase was removed, the treatment budget increases by 2.8% over the prior year, and that's really to account for the increased costs in chemicals, labor, fuel, insurance.
Do you want questions as we go, or should
Sure.
we wait? So on this, we're talking about bullet 3 here, right, on the treatment budget.
Okay.
Your final sentence is that the budget categories 518-2004 and 518-3005 were adjusted to be equal to the 2013-14 budget. Could you elaborate, because I mean that simple statement kind of covers a pretty broad impact.
Yes, so category 518-2004, and there's a typo here. 518-2004 is for pump station equipment replacement, just general replacement that happens in the course of operations and maintenance. And 518-2005, there's a typo in the staff memo, is for treatment plant equipment. During the discussion on March 17th, staff had put, meaning staff, had included some additional replacement items that were additional to the typical replacements that we see on a year-to-year basis. And as a result, those two budget items were quite a bit higher than prior years. But separately, there was a discussion on prioritization of replacements that are different than in prior years. So during the March 17th meeting, we took out the additional items and reduced budget items 518-2004 and 2005 to the same level that they were in 2013.
Do you happen to have those numbers handy?
Gosh.
I thought I did, but I didn't bring my big foldout. So
I think I do, I have it right here.
wow.
Oh, wow.
That's why
There we go.
Very impressive,
Ian's
Jim.
got
You
it.
think for their project numbers?
This is my car office.
Yeah, I swapped cars. That's how I run it. Here we go. It's not. This doesn't have the.
298,000 for plant equipment. And I don't have the pump, so 518-2005 was 298,000.
It's
518.
195.
Oh, 195?
year.
195
Here,
for
here,
218.
This one there? Here, this
So
one.
we took 298 down to 195.
No, so 517-2004 pump station equipment was 195. Is that correct,
The
Kevin?
prior year, yes.
And 518-2005 plant equipment was 298.
Okay, so that's 13, 14.
So we discussed was to hold them steady to hold them steady, and then the 10% increase, we were gonna put as a separate line item.
That's correct, thank you. Right, that's right, so there's discussion further in this summary
Yeah.
of the 10%
Yeah.
increase. So
Okay,
even holding those steady, the treatment budget increased by 2.8% to reflect salaries, fuel, insurance, other costs that we expect to increase.
Okay, that's good for now, I'll have more later, but thank you.
Okay,
Okay, any other questions?
so then we're.
I'm sorry, for bullet number 3.
for bullet three.
No, mine is more general.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
go on.
I'm not sure what you're referring to when you say bullet number 3.
Well, for item.
Roman
Roman
numerals,
numeral three.
Roman numeral
Roman
three.
numeral. No, mine's a lot more
Roman numeral.
general.
Okay, go ahead, Vivian.
Okay, so Roman numeral number 4, the NDWSCP program, the non-domestic waste source control program. The budget decreased over the prior year's budget, and in that budget, we shifted 10,000 to commission an independent review of the program. There has been some question from the public about the program and making sure we're doing the right thing. So we thought it would be a good idea. There hasn't been an independent review in recent years. We thought it would be a good idea to make sure we're doing things right with that program.
Seems a little high, especially given our discussion last time about available funds.
What's high?
Wait, hold on, we'll discuss this
Yeah.
later. Right now, wait.
Okay.
Point of order, right now Vivian is going to present this information. If you have questions specifically about what she's saying, otherwise we'll discuss it later, after the comments from the public.
There you go.
Go ahead, Vivian.
And just
That's
to
fine.
continue with that, we don't know, that's just a placeholder, we don't know what it would cost, maybe it could be done in-house. We haven't really thought that through, we just thought we should put something in there to trigger that need, since we are getting questions. Roman numeral number 5, the collection budget decrease.
Actually, I have a question on that.
On 4?
Yeah, would the 10,000 come out of the NDWSCP funds rather than SAM general funds?
That's how we had it.
That's what it is.
Right.
Okay.
We
Okay.
think we are not gonna spend the NWSCP budget, so part of it is that we think the budget might be high, and if we can lower it and lower the cost to the ratepayer, that would be beneficial.
Okay.
The collection budget decreased and, by 4.9%. Salaries and all of those other items actually increased, but in the prior budget, in 2013-14, we had budget for 2 additional staff. And it's clear from this year that and we're having trouble hiring 1 additional staff. Next year, we don't anticipate the need for 2, so we've reduced that budget.
Would you
by
repeat
1
that again,
staff.
please?
The collection budget,
No, on staff, hiring staff.
well, we were not able to hire a staff person in fiscal year 13-14.
Meaning nobody applied?
We went out for 2 applications. First time received very few. Second time received more, but now, as we'll be discussing another item, we're gonna most likely go out again because we have a different requirement now for different driver
Wait,
licenses.
you didn't get enough, you didn't get any qualified applications?
We did the second time,
Okay.
but now we're as will be discussed in a subsequent item related to the Vector truck, we're realizing that this person that we need to hire may need to have a different license. So we have to resolve that before we hire that person.
Let me just ask the question, is the only issue of hiring the truck operator? Is that the only issue at this point? Tony, is that?
Yeah, license.
That's the only possible hiring is the.
Otherwise qualified? Yes.
Otherwise, we had enough candidates and we could select from the
So
candidates.
is the current staffing level 2 dedicated employees?
We have 3, but 1 staff is supposed to be in the plant.
So 2 dedicated
So
employees
2
plus a
dedicated,
borrow?
and then we would bring in a 3rd, so that 3rd person could work in the plant.
So let me just ask a question while we're at, so, I mean, are we staffed correctly for the amount of work that's being done? Are we,
I'd say we're able
the
to-
truck side, Are we staffed properly?
I think we need one more person at least.
We need one more person.
For the, yeah, then we can get operations
Okay.
shored back up the way they should.
And did we send out applications for that one other person the last time?
Yes, we
Did
do.
we try?
It'd be a collections person. We do have some applications in, but we'll explain a little bit later that
Okay,
the
okay.
truck may need.
And why wasn't that person, why wasn't that process, why wasn't that carried through at that point?
We got very close and then.
And then
we got
this issue about the truck came up.
I'd like to express a concern. All right.
Well,
Well, I think we're gonna get to this later.
We're just asking questions.
My
Scott.
All right, I have a
just
question
asking
then, but it's
questions.
gonna sound a lot like a concern. I'm sorry, but it's gotta be said. What we're hearing in this paragraph is that we are looking at essentially pinning staffing at a lower level when we have knowledge of staffing need, and what's pinning it and what has delayed it is the notion that we somehow can't train a member of our current staff to get a Class B license. That was our plan from the get-go, was to get somebody trained with a Class B license. We don't have to delay hiring for that. It'd be nice if we could hire someone with Class B, but Class B, that's a matter of training.
How do they get
Wait,
trained?
Scott, what was your question then?
So my concern,
What was the question?
it's not a question. I'm sorry, but
Should we
the
talk about
reason,
this under
there's a
the-
reason to speak
Hold on.
at this point, and that is
Well, we'll have to
sometimes,
check the
sometimes, simple assertions have a way of taking on a life of their own, and I wanna make sure that we don't just walk past this issue and accept a notion of reduced staffing level when, you asked a very good question about, do we need more staffing?
Right. But.
Yeah, we do, and
but
I want to
discuss
express the
that.
concern now that
Well,
let
so,
this be on our minds as we go forward.
we do have another item, we're gonna talk about this in great detail, and actually, one of the reasons why we took out the staff position is because we were trying to keep the budget flat, knowing that there was a concern about cost. You know, my personal feeling is that we could use more staff. We don't have vacation relief. We could use more staff here, but I know that the funds are tight, so, we're just trying to work within the constraints that we have. So we could leave the collection budget so that it has 2 staff members open, if the board is supportive of that.
Okay, all right, so, Vivian, go ahead, go on.
Okay.
We'll bring that up again, Scott, later.
So we're gonna come back around.
We're gonna discuss, she's reviewing it and we're asking her questions, then
I mean, then we're gonna go back
we'll
over all
discuss
of
it,
the,
we'll discuss it,
yes.
everything. Yeah, we're just going on, I asked Vivian to just give a general synopsis of what's happening, to give us an idea of what we need
Yeah,
to
I just
look
wanna
at.
make sure I understand the structure.
Yeah,
Follow.
Do you understand?
I think so.
Okay, go ahead, Vivian.
Item Roman numeral number 6 lists the reserves, and actually the status of the reserves is slightly different. And a more current listing of reserves is in a sheet that is available at your desk, and there's also copies for the public over here.
Is that this?
Yes. And so I'll actually step through the sheet instead of what's under Roman numeral 6. So, and this also responds to the request by Director Warren at the previous meeting, which we discussed under the minutes. So the left column lists Sam's assets, including what's in life. Lists liabilities, which we need to keep on the books. GASB 45, accrued vacation. Lists what Sam has in reserves. There's the capital emergency reserve, 2-month operating reserve, a collections reserve, which was assigned for the Vactor, and a reserve for the solids master plan. Totals the total liabilities and long-term reserves. Looks at cash available, and that cash available number has to be reviewed in the context that we collect revenue from the members on a monthly basis, so we shouldn't have a lot of cash available. We should have, the way we operate, we should theoretically have enough to cover payroll for that month, plus a little bit more. We have a 4-month projected deposit, and this is based on the assessments that are made to the members for the remainder of this fiscal year. So we have a total projected cash through the end of this fiscal year, which is 1.6 million. We have an estimate of remaining projected expenditures, and that is from the budget. That is unused budget. So currently, our expectation is that on June 30th, 2014, there will be a surplus of 200,000 in the bank account after we've expended our budget and collected all of our receipts.
I have a question. I don't understand adding liabilities and long-term reserves. Adding those two numbers together, I just can't see the sense of that. Can we ask our accountant to explain that?
The basic concept is you have your assets on top, the 2.8 million, and you want to find what is using up those assets. So obviously you have your reserves at the 2.2 million, but really those liabilities are using up a portion, 235,000 of those assets, because they're on the books, and at some point Sam needs to pay off those assets, most likely with cash.
Okay, Rick, have a question?
Leonard, it's an accounting thing. It counterbalances the total assets. You have to, the assets have to equal total liabilities, and that's how you balance it out. It's just an accounting thing.
I'd probably never make it as an account.
Probably wouldn't.
All right, okay, Vivian, go ahead.
Doesn't mean you're a
Okay.
bad person.
Okay, go ahead, please.
So long-term reserves is not an itemization of what's in the reserve account, it's,
It is what we're holding in reserves that we're not touching for other work.
all right, I think maybe I understand.
Okay, all right, go ahead, Vivian. Please.
Roman numeral 7 summarizes the discussion on plant and collections replacement needs, and this is the discussion that is linked to the earlier discussion that we had on budget items 518, 2004, and 2005. Under Roman numeral 7, this is where the board began discussing projects that are needed to address reliability and safety needs and other replacement needs that are outside of what are typically budgeted in the SAM operating budget. There was discussion about the 7-year CIP, which has been under review by SAM and its members, a revised prioritization that was also reviewed at the March 17th meeting. And to make a long story short, the agreement at that meeting, at the March 17th meeting, was that there is a significant list of needs, and funding of those needs to be reviewed carefully. And for fiscal year 2014 and 15, it seemed that the members could likely tolerate a 10% increase over the 13-14 budget in terms of an increase in overall budget. And so that amount, which is about 320,000, was discussed as a target for staff to use to develop a prioritized list of replacement needs. In addition to that, the board discussed adding 180,000 to that amount for a total of 500,000, and that 180,000 would be taken from the emergency reserve.
Okay,
Borrowed from.
Borrowed from, with a commitment to replace that money in future years.
okay.
And that summarizes this, that ends the summary that's provided in this memo. And so currently the recommendation from staff based on what was discussed is that because a budget does need to be sent out to the members for consideration and brought back to this board for further consideration, at this point, other than the 500,000, which was discussed under item number Roman numeral 7, it appears that the rest of the budget, but actually now it sounds like we need to have more discussion on Roman numeral 5, collection budget. Appears that other than Roman numeral 5 and Roman numeral 7, the budget is ready to go out. Roman numeral 5 needs some more work by staff.
Okay, any other questions before we go on to public comment? If not, we'll go ahead with public comment. Catherine, please.
Why, thank you. I'll try and be much nicer about it.
Good luck.
Well, think positive.
The new GM, I think should be the one who determines the staffing needs. He's the one who's gonna be working with this system. I would suggest that the board budget for staff we actually need, instead of budgeting for a situation in which we have not enough staff. I would note that it's my understanding that you could probably send a staff person to a commercial trucking school for them to get their license, so that you could promote to a Class B license from within, and then train people and bring them up with new hires. It's important to have younger staff moving in and getting trained for the longevity of your staff. It is an issue in many smaller districts and even in larger districts, that if your staff is within too much of a certain age group, you're running liabilities and risks for your agency. I recall that the fellow who was here talking about the retirement and that kind of thing mentioned that the staff, we don't have a lot of young members on this staff, so the board might be wanting to look at that. But in any event, I think I'm sorry there isn't a little bit more detail here. I wasn't able to make it on the 17th, and I see there are charts there that the board has, but that the public has no access to. And
These were in the board agenda for March 17th.
So is that online?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't bring a computer. So it's too bad. I will look forward to looking at this more, but again, I think that your new general manager should, it would be my preference that he takes a close look at this before it comes to the agencies for approval, because he's going to get stuck in a situation where he might want to be making improvements as he sees fit, and he's been hamstrung, so, if anybody was listening.
Okay, any other public comment for agenda item 4A? Okay, if not, we'll have discussion. Word? Leonard? So we have these 7 items, Roman numeral items. Which one do you want to talk about? Or her comment?
Well, I actually have 2 things, but one of them can wait until we're, let me go with one of them first. But have the agency managers indicated, not necessarily in terms of number of employees, but have they indicated whether they think that the staffing level is sufficient to keep up the cleaning program the way the agency managers believe it needs to be done? Because if the agency managers think that we need more cleaning, then we need more staff to do it. So what have they said about the current ability of SAM to meet their requirements on cleaning?
We discussed this draft budget with the agency managers, and we've discussed a draft O&M agreement, and have not received any comments as to whether or not they think that we should keep the 4th person in. They may have talked directly to Tony about this.
Because,
So I can answer a little bit about Montera, and Montera's management has a very strong interest in getting the new bigger truck and a Class B licensed driver, feeling that that's an important thing for our collections needs.
So you think that Clemens thinks that we might need to increase the amount of cleaning that's done?
Very strong interest in getting
Okay.
a bigger, more capable truck and the staff to run it. This is why we're familiar with a little bit about what it takes to get somebody licensed, and why we believe that we shouldn't be holding up increasing our staffing to wait for the perfect candidate who's already got the license, and their license can be trained in. To do that, we'll have to have more people in, because that person is going to be taking time away from the plant to go get that training.
Can we hire somebody and make it a probationary condition that they have to complete getting the Class B license? Is that legal?
We have to change all the job descriptions to require a Class B license.
But I'd hate to hire somebody and on the assumption that he's gonna get the Class B and then find out for whatever reason he's unable to get it. So, you know, I'm okay with, you know, going forward with the hiring if we can make the coming out of probation contingent on successfully obtaining the required license.
Okay.
That note, we probably don't wanna plan on having a single driver, but maybe, you know, one new
Well, sure.
primary and one.
You know, we need to get the current employees trained also, but, you know, if we're hiring somebody new on that expectation, you know, let's do that up front, make it a
Point
condition.
taken. Right, Rick?
So, just a question, regarding the Class B license. So, we're sort of blending two issues. I know there's another agenda item on this, on the whole factor situation.
No, that's right, so,
So we're sort of we're blending two things a little bit, but I'm curious, are there any other external factors? Is it as simple as, well, we now require a Class B license, so Bill and Joe, you're gonna get training next month. Is it as simple as that, or is there external factors, is it more complicated? Do Bill and Joe say, you know, you don't say, you don't say, we don't deserve to do that, or are there other things going on that make it more complicated than perhaps it seems on the surface?
Well, we'll need to prepare new job descriptions to discuss with the union. There might be a salary increase. We'd have to include that in the budget. But it's all of it is achievable. And I've just got to back up a little bit. So since I've been here, I have heard that for a long time we were allowed to interview, or we were allowed to interview for this person but not hire them. So the interest in bringing on, this is what I've heard, the interest in bringing on another collection systems person was not an enthusiastic interest. So that's where I was coming from, was thinking that the feeling at the board level was that we want to keep the staffing down and trying to manage what we have within that. If staffing is not an issue, you know, if that's not an issue, it changes everything, because you do want better equipment, you do want more staff, you want to be able to do the things you do. And if that's the direction the board wants to go in, then it completely changes the temperament of this discussion.
We went through a number of difficult things over the past, year and a half. Lost a member of the staff, and there were some things that were causing some transition. I think there was some question about, look, if the agencies are gonna pick up some of the cleaning responsibilities. The pendulum has swung here a couple of times. Dave Dixon years ago recommended that the agencies pick up their own cleaning, and we did for a time, and then we got a different manager, and he's like, I think we could do it, and so Sam's been doing it since. But then the question came up, well, what's the smart thing? The managers and staff have been talking about it. We're now pretty well into the discussion, I think, about let's get that new agreement in place. And now it's let's try to, I think, sense I'm getting from our staff is let's get ourselves ready for Sam to be able to meet that request for the services that we're asking for. So I think that's where we are, and I think the time for some of the uncertainty, given some of the things that happened, I think that's passed.
All right, great.
Oh, well, but from what I hear from staff, it sounds like we should be putting, one position more into the upcoming budget, at least?
I mean, I think you should have another crew.
I mean, we're talking about, well, and what does one person add? A couple $100,000?
Right. Less than that.
Well, okay, let's just say 150, 200. My point is, at a $3.1 million budget, 10% is 300,000, so one or two people could easily add 5 or 10%, which is a concern because we put a cap at 10% by putting in some capital projects, and now we're, if I'm wrong, we're looking at one or two more staff, which I think are important. But it sounds to me now, we could end up with a budget that could easily be 15, maybe 20%?
Well, one additional person is in the budget currently, so I think we're talking about one
Okay.
additional.
If the additional person is on collections. That's paid for by the agencies by virtue of the cleaning costs that we're individually asking
That's where they
for.
do the work.
It's service for hire, essentially. So that's different than the permanent ongoing staff that's here at the plant. That's,
So this will not be going back to the member agencies in the general budget, it'll be in the collections budget, am I saying that right?
Yeah.
So collections is treated separate
right.
by the member agencies.
But
that-
it still goes out and comes back.
If we didn't need Sam to do any collections at all, our collections
It's
budget
the
could go to
average.
zero. Now, nobody's proposing that,
Right.
but that's one where if we want to pick up the full cost, we can, but I think collectively we're getting a better deal.
Yeah, so, if I'm hearing right, we're gonna still keep the general budget at 10%. We could bump the collections budget by, say, another person, which is, I think, what I'm hearing you're saying, not just the one, but add a second one. We gotta get the Class B people in there, et cetera. I would think that makes sense.
So, question, though, is that for this incremental person, that role, we call it, Scott call it service for hire. Is that not something that would be easily done by a third party?
It has been before.
Well, you would either have to do all of the collections by a third party or not, I think. You couldn't bring in one person from an outside to fill in the
I mean,
gap.
you could do temporary staffing that way,
Yeah,
but
Okay, but that's not a long,
but they wanna know the system.
that's not a sustainable fix for us.
To,
Okay.
to,
Yeah.
to farm it out, all the member agencies would have to agree that all three are gonna farm it out, because any combination of, other than 0 or 3 is not viable.
well,
Got it.
you put presupposition on the front of that. Any member agency can decide to do its own cleaning.
And
It's
makes it
gonna work a lot
difficult.
better if we collaborate.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in fact, Chuck Duffy looked at this and, for reasons that I don't really wanna go into right now, he said that, any savings from farming it out to a private company would be fairly small. It has to do with the way Sam accounts for it and the way staff are flexible, being able to move between operations and collections, and it's really complicated, and I've basically been convinced that it's probably not something we're gonna be able to do.
All right, just to clarify through the chair, so we're directing staff to add another collections person on top of the one they had planned to put in.
But what we'll do is we'll revert to the fiscal year 13-14 budget staffing. Instead of dropping a person, we'll keep it the same. So the overall budget for the collections budget will increase over 13-14 just because salaries, chemicals, and that insurance and that sort of thing is increased. So I would just, gut feeling is that I think it'll go up the same as the treatment budget,
So
which is about 3%.
there's something that I didn't understand last year, and that was, how if we have 2 collection crews of 2 people each, the collection system maintenance was 5.5 FTE. When I add 2 plus 2, I get 4, not 5.5. And I was never able to understand Sam's explanation for how 2 plus 2 equals 5.5.
Is that pertinent for this budget?
Yes, because I don't understand what the staffing level is that's being proposed right now, because I didn't
Why don't
really
we
get an
ask
answer to the
Tony?
question I
Tony.
just asked,
Tony?
which is,
I'll-
how
I'll
many
try.
people are currently in the collection system crew?
Currently, you have 3, we had 4, and then, but we also have people from other departments that will assist. So some of their time gets put into there too, and it's a budgeting, it's a tool to come up with some kind of budget, it's not exact. And, so we have to have some means to get that number. And so we wanna include the people that actually do work in there. And we have 2 mechanics, and they do about half of their work in there also.
Okay, so
that makes
that-
5, and then some operations, sometimes they help out too.
Okay, so if we have 4 that are basically dedicated to collections, and then there will be some amount of mechanic time on top of that.
About half of about one
So that, to me, that adds up to 4.5, not 5.5.
You'd have 4 full-time collection people, we have 2 mechanics, one of them, they both do about half-time, so that's 5 people. And then some operator assistants at times, I forget what we added in for that.
And Tony, there's some of Tony's time too to
Something like that,
manage
yeah.
them.
But, you know, if we have 4 dedicated collection system people, I don't see that you would need to borrow from operations at that point.
We could look at that.
I mean, I thought the whole point that you're asking for it is so that you don't have to borrow from operations.
Well, the operations staff though, or the work on the pump stations, it's generally,
Yeah.
it's a more
typically.
specialized skill.
They do collections work also.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, any
Moving right along.
Moving right along, so, so, does the board want this budget given to the, general managers and to look at?
Well, I think at this point it goes to the member agencies.
I mean,
we
excuse me, member agencies I meant to say.
I was-
I was
we can go a
with
couple
it,
of-
Jim, with the change to the staff that we just discussed.
We can go a couple of different ways. We could, and there was one kind of larger question I had too, that I'd like to get to before we decide.
I thought that was a
Sure.
comment.
Hmm?
I thought that was just a comment.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So we could send it out to the agency managers for their comment. We could get their feedback and come back and approve it in principle here for distribution at our next meeting. Or we can take it in the form it is now and send it out for approval. There is something that happens though when we send it out, and that is the agencies get to go up or down. That's the way the JPA works. If we want the ability to manipulate it, we really want to do that before we distribute it for approval. Because distribution for approval is distribution for approval. We've gotten a little sloppy on that in the past, and it's never worked out well for us. So I'd like to caution us to be as certain as a team as we can be before we distribute, that we're all saying, we're looking for an upvote from our members.
Does the timing work? This is March. I don't know if any of the member agencies are gonna need to do 218s or not. But does the timing work to get the information to the tax collector's office by July?
Late July.
I think it's July 30th.
That's pretty late.
You know, if we send it to the agency managers first, which I'd like to do, are we gonna be able to get it? So then it would come back to this board at our April meeting, and if we approve it at our April meeting, sending it out to the member agencies for approval, then the member agencies are gonna do that in their May meetings. And then, I've forgotten, does it come back to the board for
Then
a
we have to-
summary?
Then we
acceptance?
ratify, but that's pro forma about it.
Yeah, so do you think the timing
Hmm.
works? Because
Yeah,
I
it's
would
May,
certainly
June.
like to do what Scott suggests and send it to agency managers first, as long as the timing works.
Rick, do you have
That's
any
fine.
comments? That sounds fine with, Rick?
So I was gonna be okay just to send it out and let's get it done, but I'm fine with that.
You know, they have seen it, they saw it on February 24th, and it hasn't substantially changed, except we'll adjust the collections budget to reflect what was just discussed.
And that gets me to my next thing, and maybe we wanna, bear with me for this real quick. So our manager and our engineer have looked over the big spreadsheet that we worked over last week. And they have a lot of thoughts on that. And that's basically item 7, which we're not really talking about distributing out as an action tonight. But it does remind me that in times past, we have separated, and we would do well to keep clear in our minds the difference between our maintenance budget and our capital improvement budget, our projects budget, if you will. Some maintenance takes the form of projects, because you gotta manage them like projects, because they are. But maintenance and improvement are different things. And the way the JPA is structured, we would do well to walk into that eyes wide open and make sure we're all on the same page on that. We're providing more harmony amongst us to do that. And what's not really called out or teased out here is that difference between the CMP and the CIP. And I know it's something that our team at Montera has raised questions about. And I think if we do the circulation of the whole, of all the parts but 7, if we say, now, and as a separate matter, please get us your feedback on 7, I know that Montera is prepared, or is preparing a number of things about what we perceive the relative priorities to be. And I think you'll like some of it, because we've got some thoughts on maybe how we could do some of the same things cheaper, so we could budget to do more instead of being constrained with numbers that may not fit what it's actually costing now.
And you're talking about the 5-year CIP?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so, but in that, our engineer has asked specific questions about, is this a maintenance item, or is this a 5-year CIP item? Because we need to make sure that these things are segregated appropriately, so that we can all be clear on participation and so forth.
We should also note that there's no JPA agreement requirement to do the collection system budget at all, but I don't think that we've always done the capital budget. I mean, we almost always do, but I think that at least once we didn't do the capital budget at the same time as the O&M budget. The O&M budget is the critical one that has to be approved by all the member agencies before July 1st. That absolutely has to be done. The capital one, if there's problems, we can.
Well, we didn't do one last year, so we know for sure you don't have to tie them together.
Yeah, so
We don't want to do that again.
I just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of that, that there's less pressure on getting that done on a certain time frame.
So I'm suggesting that we send it out for, circulate it amongst the managers for their feedback on 2 separate things. One would be all the items but 7, and then the other would be on 7.
But not all the items.
What?
7, but not all the other items.
Right.
Okay, all right. That sounds fine.
I support that, that's
That
good.
sounds fine with me.
Mhm.
So should we extract the collections budget, circulate the general administrative budget, the collections budget, and 7?
Certainly, because the collections budget is that's a, I'll make too light of it, but it's kind of a buffet of, how many lines, how many feet you want cleaned and how often. And so that's an as requested budget.
So that goes out with the formal request for comment to be received in 2 weeks or something, so we can have it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we should ask for feedback by, there's gotta be time to assimilate it all.
So the feedback from the
The managers.
managers. Because we don't meet again for another 3.5 weeks.
So we'll say 2 weeks?
We give them 2 weeks, then we,
Okay.
then staff has time to deal
Okay,
with
so
comments.
direct them, it's 2 weeks. All right, so we're all set on that?
We are.
Oh,
But
I
no,
did have
You-
one more
you- you-
thought.
You had your question.
No, but this has to do with funding, and this is an important item. And talking to our manager, he reminded me that there is the possibility, when we were talking last week about where to scare up the funds to do some of this stuff, we may have at each agency some reserves that we might want to look to if there are projects that we think are vital enough to do. So Montera is going to discuss whether or not we want to put money forward for some of the things that might not be achievable otherwise. And if you have reserves, I'd urge you to give that consideration.
You can't.
But we're not limited to simply what we can do through raising rates if there are other monies we can look to.
Jim, if Scott's done with that, there's one other issue I wanted to raise, which is, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, it doesn't make any sense to me that the administrative costs should be based on flows. I think the administrative costs have to be based on plant ownership percentages, and nothing else makes sense to me.
That made sense to clients as well. And, if there's a rationale to support it, then we need to hear it, because absent that, ownership seems
The
to
only
be-
guidance there is in the JPA agreement, I was going through it at our budget meeting last week, and I must have looked through the JPA agreement 5 times, and it's pretty silent on it. The only thing that it mentions regarding the division of administrative costs is for the very first budget, before there's any experience or anything, that the member agencies contributed to the administrative budget on percentages based on their voting power on the board, so 25, 25, 50. And then after that initial it is completely silent on where to go from there. But I would argue that, given that initial funding arrangement, and because the voting is based on ownership percentages, that the administrative budget following that first one should be based on plan ownership percentages, you know, following the lead of the original one being based on voting weight. 'Cause I just don't think that anybody can convince me that it makes sense to base it on flows. And, you know, in terms of the impact on Granada's budget, you know, we're probably talking literally a few $1,000s, but I think that we need to do what's reasonable.
Okay, we could discuss that when the budget comes back.
Well, I think we need to do that before we send it out for member agency approval.
Right.
Do we,
We could discuss that next month with our discussion on.
Get the GM.
hey, we could ask now, Tony, are you aware of any particular reason that it makes sense to do it one way versus the other?
I'm up.
Okay, so,
Okay.
do you guys have an inclination? Because we could move it to the ownership distribution now if we wanted.
It makes
I don't
very
think
little
we know.
difference in the money.
Yeah.
No, but I want to think about precedent, because then if it's based on ownership, then it's rigid as opposed to variable. And although it's subtle, it's a subtle difference in the other direction.
Okay, so we'll talk about that next time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, then, let's go on to,
But
Yeah,
do you want an agenda item for next meeting
It
specifically?
would be part of the budget.
I think part of the budget.
Okay.
Yes.
We talked
I'd
about
like
the
to see
fixed percentage too at the same time.
Maybe a separate agenda.
Do it all
I'd
at
like
once.
to see
Yeah,
staff,
maybe
staff
separate.
You
recommendation.
want a separate?
Separate agenda, yes.
Well, I mean, this sounds to me, and I may be jumping far ahead here, but it sounds like you're talking about the terms of the JPA, so I don't know if that's
Well,
as simple as.
This, I mean, I trust Leonard when he says the JP is silent on this, other than the initial thing. I would just suggest we hash it out, talk about it, and actually figure out what the bottom line difference would be if we made that change. If it really is de minimis, maybe we won't care to even change it.
As
Or
opposed
we
to the
may-
maximus.
Okay, Alan,
Okay.
thank you. All right, so we'll discuss that as part of the budget. Then we'll go on to,
So to be clear, right now, we're saying, send the budget to the agency managers.
Right.
And then,
right, and then get it back, results back in, comments back in 2
Yeah,
weeks.
that's
and so then on the SAM April regular meeting agenda, we will have an item to approve sending it to the agencies
Correct.
for their approval.
Correct.
So does the JPA require the budget to be sent to the respective boards at this meeting? I thought there was a 60-day requirement in section 5 of the JPA.
I would have thought we were
Well,
ahead of schedule.
In previous years, we had a hard time making it, so we kind of advanced it by at least a month to make sure we make the time frames.
As long as the board's okay with
I don't think it was okay.
it. Yeah.
I think last year we got it
Section.
out to the agencies and in front of them for approval by late May. I recall.
Because it went back and
It was,
forth
it
twice.
ran out.
Did it come back?
Went back and forth a couple of times.
Yeah.
First meeting of the
That's
board.
good about last
First
year.
meeting of the board.
But we just had to have enough time for anybody who had to do it 218 to get that teed up.
I think it's fine.
I don't see it.
I mean, the big thing is
We're okay?
be done by the end of the fiscal year and be sure that 218 is gonna be done and that we can tell the tax collector what to collect.
All right, let's go ahead on to 4B, discuss SAM code of conduct and provide direction to staff.
Okay, this item was requested by a board member at a prior meeting. It was placed on the agenda at the last meeting, because of the length of the meeting was deferred to this meeting for discussion. So there was a request to put, to develop a code of conduct for SAM. So we took a look at some of our neighbors to see if any codes of conduct were available for review, and we found one from Midcoastside County and we found one from the City of Half Moon Bay. They're very different, and so I put both in the agenda to ask, do you want Sam's code of conduct to look like either of these, or take the best of each, or do you want something different? We also found other codes of conduct, for example, one from City of Sunnyvale that made these look really short. So, there are many ways to skin this cat.
Does the Santa Clara Water District have one at all?
Did not look at Santa Clara.
I'm being facetious, because some of their board members should be in jail.
Go ahead, Dick, anything else? So, we want
So,
to discuss?
really looking for direction as to what you're looking for. Are you looking for something short and sweet, which
Can
would,
we have order? Please, go ahead, Dick.
so the Half Moon Bay Code of Conduct is succinct, to the point, and looks comprehensive. The other one, the Coastside County, is also comprehensive, but quite a bit longer, and addresses a lot of other issues besides code of conduct. So, we just don't know
if I may
really where to
comment?
go with this.
So I was the elusive board member who suggested this, so this is an item that we have at Half Moon Bay, and it's helpful to say, I think our board has made a lot of progress, I think we work well together, and I suggested that we consider creating and adopting a code of conduct that's more along the lines of the Half Moon Bay example, but specific for SAM directors. And, because it sort of formalizes our expectations for one another, how we interrelate to one another, how we respect each other. And I think that's all, points us in a positive, healthy direction. So that's why I suggested we put it on the agenda.
Okay.
Jim?
Yes, Leonard?
If
Oh,
Rick is
wait, hold on. Before we discuss this, any other questions for Vivian? Okay, in that case, before we discuss, we're gonna go on to public comment.
Good.
Catherine?
Thank you. I noticed that Half Moon Bays is very simple and very brief. And that CCWD's is very long and, probably very detailed and very legalese. There must be something in between, but is this for conduct at board meetings? Are you going to have a code of conduct for the public too? Or, is there something maybe from the CSDA, the Special District Association, that is perhaps more up to date? There was no date on the one from Half Moon Bay, so I have no idea how old it is. Maybe it's started this year, I don't know. But I did note that the ones from CCWD are 8 years old and older. So it may be worthwhile to look and see. I think it's useful for board members to have this kind of thing available just as part of the general policies. And maybe you would want to look at board policies and procedures in general in putting together a board member handbook more than just a code of conduct. So that's, yeah, I think if I were you, I would call CSDA. I think maybe something that's a little less parochial might be useful.
Okay, thank you. All right, discussion, Rick, I think you were talking.
Yeah, so I would lean toward something that's concise and to the point. The Half Moon Bay example here is that it's updated every year, then it's signed every year. So every year that whoever's on the council will review it, take consensus on it. After the initial draft, there's usually a tweak here, a tweak there, not much, and then everybody signs it to follow those guidelines. So I'd like to hear what other board members think, but I think it's a good, healthy thing for us to do to continue the progress we're making.
So Rick, your intention was for the board code of conduct?
Yes, it's for this board.
For this board?
Yes.
Okay, Leonard? And then Rick Horner.
In looking at the two of them, whoever wrote CCWDs was paid by the word. And I have a huge objection to the style of CCWDs in that it reiterates state law. And I think it's just silly for agencies to adopt policies, and I said this when we were talking about the labor policies manual. I don't think that we should have written policies that just reiterate state law, you know, unless you wanna just put in a one-liner saying, you know, the state code that applies. So I'd be inclined to go with something that's much, much closer to Half Moon Bays and look at CCWDs and maybe pull out some of the things and add them to Half Moon Bays. You know, notably the guidelines for what we approve of as what meetings and other things the directors get paid for doing on behalf of the agency. And, you know, I made the snide remark about Santa Clara Valley Water District, but that water district, in fact, is out of control with some of the things that directors are doing. And so we need to really have clear guidelines that say, and I don't know, I don't think any directors here actually go to any other meetings on Sam's behalf, but you know, we need to have clear guidelines on which ones of those meetings are considered agency business and you get the director's fee for attending. But
We have in the past.
other than that, I don't really see much in the CCWDs that we need to pull in and add to something modeled very closely on Half Moon Bays.
Okay, Rick?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. There's so many different pieces here that this could be including. We have the ethics training everybody has to go through. So I don't think I'd want to repeat anything that's in the ethics training, because why have it in like 2 places? I mean, that's just kind of extra. And as Leonard said in here, like in CCWD, there's things like you can't hold incompatible offices.
Right.
Well, I mean, does that have to be in our manual, or is that, you know, you can't hire a relative, or you can't take contributions from staff members? I mean, is it more like when, in the good old days when I was on MCC, we adopted rules of conduct? I mean, you've mentioned conduct, you know, how you treat each other, how you talk, how you act in meetings, that's like a chunk. So it just, I mean, do you know, all the legalese, the code of ethics, you know, conduct at a meeting, how many of those pieces, you know, do we want in this? And, you know, I'm totally opposed to replicating state code.
Agreed.
I mean, so it's just, how many pieces do you want and how easy it is for them to compile those? So.
Okay, Scott?
I like the idea of succinct. I'm trying to log into the CSDA webpage, they've got a sample. I'd like to take that and Half Moon Bay item and shuffle them together and come up with something succinct.
The intent is, it's practical, it's operational, it's practical. The first example in here is, you know, it's like a contract, right? We'd have to, with all due respect to our attorney, have to hire an attorney to interpret how to follow it.
Well,
So-
a lot of that's policy on what you get remuneration for. And in answer to your question, yes, I mean, I've gone and represented this agency at other meetings. I don't even do the mileage, although, you know, but we ought to be clear on that, but I don't think that's what the code of conduct is really about. If you look at the Half Moon Bay document, it's really more about, it's really more of an acknowledgement of we're public servants and we need to be behaving in a certain way towards the people who we work with and for. And I think we can get a nice short document that really captures that.
Yeah, I think this board does do that, that there have been a few, 1 or 2 exceptions, but no one's perfect, and I think the board's done well, but, Alan?
Yeah, I agree with everything said so far. I think if we could take this and modify it to our situation. For example, it's always good, especially if we ever get to renew someday, that, you know, you don't go to employees and talk about things. You know, you we allow the mayor to talk to the press when there's questions and things, so that people kind of understand the right way to handle things, chain of command and so forth, and it's worked well for us, and I think it's good to adapt something like this to Sam and talk about how things are supposed to happen. It's just a good basic document, and then nobody can say later, well, I didn't know I was supposed to do it that way. Well, yeah, you did, you signed it at the beginning of the year.
No, I agree. For example, going to the press, this chair went to the press with a prepared statement and comments, and then the local paper comes out with something completely different, quoting another board member that was interviewed sequentially. So I think we need to do that. I think I agree, and
Jim, I'd like to make
Go ahead.
a structural suggestion. GSD for the first 3 or 4 decades of its existence had no bylaws. All of the guiding stuff was in the ordinance code, which is, let's say, a royal pain to change. And so somewhere around a decade ago, I suggested that we move anything out of the ordinance code that doesn't have to be there into bylaws. And so what I'm suggesting here is that Sam actually create a set of bylaws. The code of conduct would be one chapter in it. Another chapter would be how board meetings are run, you know, like what we just informally discussed, where, you know, staff presentation, director questions, public comment, director discussion. We could actually put that into the bylaws to say that's the order of each agenda item.
you know, that sounds like a great idea. How about, let's have a committee do that for us and present the bylaws and code of conduct back. How about, do we have any volunteers?
I nominate Leonard.
I second.
Oh, did I see that coming?
Thank you, Leonard.
Rick, would you like to participate? What is
No,
it?
it's a one-man committee.
One man.
So what?
Do I get
what
paid
is-
for meeting with myself?
Well,
Well, it depends on what
What's
you
the,
write
what's
up
the
in the
objective of the
draft.
committee?
So
Dear Chair, and with all apologies if I misspoke to the press.
No. It was
but-
just interesting. It was just that, there's no offense taken. It's
Hopefully it
just-
reflected 100% of what we agreed
I
on.
think we're gonna have to deal with the fact that the press reaches out and then wants to talk to
The
whoever they wanna reach out to.
press does what it wants to do. We have to accept that. So would you
What is the objective of the committee? What's the expected outcome?
to crystallize a code of conduct, and Leonard suggested
As
bylaws.
part of bylaws?
Do we need bylaws?
I don't want any bylaws.
What are
Code
bylaws,
of conduct.
Jim?
Let's work on a
So-
draft of this that works for Sam and bring it
What,
back.
what I heard was short and sweet, along the lines of the Half Moon Bay one, perhaps with some contribution from the CSDA
Yep,
sample.
okay. And we had that as an agenda item for next meeting, because Leonard and I will have that done.
Okay, yeah. So I think these are some good things, you know, these include some good things, like a refrain from abusive conduct, personal charges, or verbal attacks, you know, and.
What is
Wait
that,
a
you know,
minute.
Implications
Let's
that
not get
you go to
crazy
jail
about
and
this.
stuff. Is that-
You can't take all the fun.
There is actually one thing in CCWDs that I would suggest that we incorporate, and that was the informal part that ends with essentially, don't do anything that your next door neighbor is gonna get annoyed with you doing.
Because they might be watching TV. Right, so let's go ahead on to the, thank you, Leonard.
Last time I suggested an agenda item.
Let's go on to the next item, which is,
Punished, yeah. We'll get to
old
that.
business C,
I
update,
bet you are.
update from Recycled Water Committee, including discussion on recycled water grant funding opportunities.
That's what I
Vivian?
want you from me.
This item was placed on the agenda at the request of a board member, I believe it was Director Rowan.
Yep.
And it provides an opportunity for the recycled water subcommittee to discuss what's been going on in that arena.
I think
Start by
everybody's,
reminding us who's on the committee.
I think it's me and Alan and Scott.
And we haven't met.
We have not yet, because of all the budget craziness.
There is a little news. Vivian sent out a note, and I went and did a little reading at the Aqua website that 1% loans are available through the state. It's a very attractive rate, but just for grins, I took a look at, suppose we did a $6 million project and we borrowed the full $6 million. The monthly principal on a 30-year at 1% would be roughly $20,000 a month.
Do we use that for capital projects?
No,
Well-
we have to use that to pay back the,
If we if we wanted to do a recycled water project for about $6 million, it'd be about 20 grand a month. So we'd be looking at, you know, if we were to do the project we were contemplating last time, where we got something set up to get water to Ocean Colony, we'd have to answer the question, where's the 20,000 a month come from? But
I
at
was thinking
least
more like airbags, but that's okay.
Wait, hold on a minute, going back to protocol, we have a public comment on this issue, I think. Catherine, before we discuss it further, you had a comment?
Well, no, but given that you decided that we had to turn in our speaker slips at the beginning of, ahead of any agenda item, I filled out one for each agenda item, just in case I had something. It will use up a lot of paper, but I will concede that that is what the board wants. Perhaps you would like to put something in the budget for looking for these grants. Grant writing is not free. And even getting loans is expensive. If we are serious, I think we should have something like that in the budget. I think, given the news today that the drought is going to continue, that this is the third driest drought year in the history of the state, and that's looking back at tree rings that go back thousands of years. It may, and we have a much greater population now than we did then. I think it would be very useful for us to be looking at ways to stretch our water use further. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, further discussion?
just to finish the thought, I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm sorry.
I like the idea. I mean, 1% is inexpensive money. It's nice to know, you know, 20 grand a month is kind of the amount we'd need to cover to be able to pull off something like that. What we were looking at previously was gonna cost more than $6 million, but it's been a few years. Some of these prices have come down, and if we were gonna look at it, that might give us kind of a, you know, just the pin in the, you know, on the green to give us some idea of what we'd have to get to.
I think we should set a committee meeting date, and I think we should talk about the action steps going forward. Because one of the things I'd like to see the committee do is prepare a press release to kind of counter what we heard from the review about how this whole thing became you know, died because of the rivalry of the different agencies. I think it would be nice, maybe have a joint statement between us and the CCWD saying that we're working on this, we think we have a good working relationship, and
What about the rivalry?
that there is no more we buried it.
We
well,
could do
it's a different CCWD board now.
we could do a tug of war thing, and, I mean, Montero Moss Beach, we have a thing where Montero Moss Beach have a tug of war at our, sometimes annual
You mean a serious
picnic.
tug of war?
Oh, yeah, no, a rope and the flag and the whole
But Scott,
thing.
if we're gonna do that, the two teams have to be on opposite sides of the primary clarifier.
Okay,
We're getting on the target here. So why don't we, the three of us will set a meeting date, and then we'll report back.
I have a question maybe for
So
Scott.
Rick wants to say something?
It's my agenda, I don't wanna say something.
Okay, Rick.
After Leonard, tug of war starts.
Have you looked at the money flow from the $6 million project? Would we sell enough recycled water that the income from that pays back that monthly loan payment?
What I did was I established how much revenue we'd have to cover the loan, and noted that any project that we do is gonna have to come up with that money every month for 30 years. And so then we can go look at what's feasible, and I think clearly the committee's gonna have to go talk with Ocean Colony Partners, go talk with the nursery operator, figure out, you know, hey, it's been a while, we talked about it, we learned a few things, given what you learned, what would you like to try? And then knowing kind of the baseline number that we'd have to hit, then we could say, well, can't do a 6 million project, how about size it down for a 3, and then we could do it for 10 grand a month, or whatever, but it's just setting a parameter.
Don't forget that during rainy months, the recycled water recipients might not buy any recycled water. So factor that into your cash flow.
It's we've got documents thick with this stuff, this is not news.
All right, Rick.
What I was, the main focus, we have the letter, I think, Vivian also sent it out here with the 1% rates and things like that, but I think there was another email circulated earlier about what my preference would be, which is grants, matching grants, grants. Went to a meeting up in Pacifica a while ago, and they said they had some sources I want to go for. But I think if anybody has that email, or was there an earlier email discussion about grant applications that were also opened up? I couldn't find that email.
There was the Clean Beaches.
There's the Clean
initiative.
Beaches.
That's what Vivian wrote to us about. They're looking for 75%. We cough up 75%, and they would go on top of that. Your understanding was that was really initially intended to be like 50-50.
Well, yeah, I can give you an update on that under the manager's report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that's
Okay.
one of the things that have been put forward. And then,
Because obviously, even if it's 50-50 match, okay, boom, we just cut our costs in half.
except that those things come with, we just have to recognize those
Yeah.
things often come with strings, and we wind up spending on things that maybe we wouldn't have otherwise. So
Okay.
it's all worth looking at, and I'm looking forward to the committee getting together and then talking with the potential users, because really, they're the ones with the big need, and we should figure out where they are and what they're up for.
Sure, because my concern is, I want to get the grant, if we're going to do grants, I want to get that process started, because they're all going to run out at some point. If we're not up there, we're going to miss out. So.
The fact of the matter is, when you look at the history of grant awards, the little agencies rarely get anything, and the bigger ones like EB Mud or Scraping Up or SBSA.
So let's change that.
Yeah.
The comment was made about grant writer, but didn't we essentially have somebody at SRT doing a lot of that?
SRT was keeping an eye on all the grant availabilities,
Yeah.
and then
And I thought they did really well
they
at
did.
that.
And they've done, SRT did some really nice work for our potable water at Montera, and we've had money come in from that. So there are some possibilities, but they're, don't get the idea that we're gonna get big bucks out of this. We'll get something to help.
So the committee will be asking the potential recipients basically how much water they would want to receive, and then you would compute.
Well, it's gonna be more than that. Like, talking to Bruce, he went a great distance with us last time, and did a lot of analysis of the water that we were able to provide. So he's gonna be asking questions that before we sit down with him, we should talk with Tony and find out where we left it on what did we do about finding the sources of the ion loading, and are we gonna be able to get that amount down, or is he gonna be in a situation where he's got to find other water to blend it with? Or is he gonna be looking at loading it up with a bunch of gypsum, or, he's far enough along in the process with us that he's gonna have lots of questions if he's even interested at this point. Based on what the review said, it sounds like he's got his interest. So we need to sit down and have a conversation. But the whole business about how we model the funding of the per unit water, that's just one slice.
I would suggest that the committee ask Tony to contact Daly City, which some of us had a tour of their facility a number of years ago, and it's pretty impressive. And they do what they call manufacturing water to the specs that each of their 3 golf courses needs. And I don't think they provide identical water to the 3 golf courses. It's slightly different. And so it might be useful to know what's involved in the different processes they have to do to make the water suitable for the golf courses.
Where it was at the time was substantially more expensive than what Ocean Colony was even able to consider. The gypsum is not cheap, and then they were looking at, if I recall, they were looking at either continuing to buy potable water or buying something else, and that's not exactly where Ocean Colony is. If it were that, then any water we could provide would be cheaper than what they could get from the water district, but that's not really the trade-off.
Now,
All right, so, let me cut in here, so this is great, these are topics for the committee to talk about. Could the committee might keep the interested parties and the agencies informed as to what they're talking about. So let's go ahead on to, old business item 4D, purchase of combination sewer cleaning and vacuum truck, provide direction to staff. Vivian?
So this item was placed on the agenda at the request of the board from last meeting, or no, it's through individual conversations. Director Warren, Director Kowalczyk, I believe, are the two that mentioned this should be on the agenda. So this staff memo provides a chronology of what I could find related to the Vactor. There's a lot of anecdotal discussion about, we've been talking about this for years, et cetera, so I did a little research to find what I could from agendas and that sort of thing, and this is what I could find. So it seems like the Vactor discussions, unless they were not documented in the minutes, began somewhere back in May of 2011 when there was a request to purchase a trailer, which was purchased. And then through the last budget discussion for the 13-14 discussion, it appears that there was authorization to purchase a new truck, and then also a discussion to purchase a new Vactor, or Vactor type truck. Vactor's a brand, so can't really say Vactor. And so then when I arrived in August or September, there was some discussion about purchasing the truck. There had not been any work developed at that time. So, and in discussion with Tony, we really wanted a Vactor. And in discussion with other agencies, they really recommended we get a Vactor if we could at all get one, because there was a lot of discussion about other trucks and limitations and what, in terms of reliability and functionality. But knowing that I guess we could have made the decision to sole source, but really wanted to make sure it was a competitive process, so developed a specification for a truck that would meet all the requirements. We were getting ready to go out and solicit proposals for the truck and discuss the truck with staff, and this is where the discussion of the Class B license came up, and the fact that no one had one, and that our job descriptions didn't require one. So then we took the discussion to the managers, and they said that this information was different than what they had been told or they had discussed in the past. So the Vactor purchase is a $300,000 purchase, and once you commission it, you pay for it, and it takes 6 months, and then you get it. So we just wanted to make sure if we were spending that money that it was the right thing to do, given that it seemed like there was a lot of new information coming out kind of all of a sudden, in September, October, November. So anyway, the whole dialogue is here in the staff report. We've talked about quite a bit of it under the budget. It's not a problem getting Class B trained. It's not a problem getting a job description, going to the OU. All of that is completely doable. Bringing on an extra person also, because one of the concerns was that it would sit in the yard half the time. All of that's completely doable. There is a cost associated with it, and just with due diligence, thought it would be good to bring it back to make sure that this is what everyone wants to do. It sounds like it is what everyone wants to do, so that would close the discussion. But anyway, this is all presented here for your consideration. And some of the historical documents that are discussed are attached to the staff memo. And actually in the CIP, in the 7-year CIP that got referred out to members, the Vactor is actually shown in fiscal year 1920. And I don't know where that came from. Fiscal year 1920. That's where it's shown in the 7-year CIP.
It would be
2019-2020.
I got that.
Yeah, but I'm not sure Ellen.
It's not shown in
Read that one
fiscal
out
year
so
12,
long
13,
time.
13.
Wow.
Okay,
Your truck.
okay, thank you. Any questions for Vivian? Leonard?
What's the lead time, remind us, between ordering it and arrival?
6 months.
6 to 8 months.
So you have confidence that by the time, if we were to order it tomorrow, that by the time it arrives, we will have somebody on staff with the appropriate license?
I think we could do that.
I'm not asking you to guarantee it, I'm saying you have confidence.
I do.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, any other questions?
I'd like to just hear public comment.
Any other questions? Rick?
Just in this discussion here where it was talking about this trailer option, I can't really see from here, was that just totally written off as being inadequate?
The trailer apparently
It sort of
had-
seems like they're saying, hey, it's a great idea, and then they're saying, well, maybe it's not a great idea.
It wasn't discussed apparently here, but it was a suggestion that came to me from a number of sources who were with agencies that did not want to put the capital outlay out for a Vector. That was the option.
It doesn't require a B license, and it's cheaper.
I can mention
So
what Chuck
I don't
has
think
said.
it was brought up during any of our discussions, maybe it's when I was
It
on
was,
vacation for a
I
year.
certainly discussed it with our manager,
Oh.
and he had discussed it with Chuck, and the El Granada Highlands were what came up when the idea of a trailer came to mind.
It can-
So it was written off.
Trying to back it up and around, I mean, you talk to Chuck, I think you'll find.
Okay.
Okay.
So actually, that's a good point on the trailer. So it sounds, on the surface sounds appealing, but it sounds like there are places we would need to access that make it untenable for a trailer.
Well, let me mention what
I
Chuck
mean,
has
I think
to
half a
say.
day would be, you know,
Then I'm fine with the
it's
trailer.
all easy.
Okay,
Well,
so
good.
wait, we're gonna hold off discussion until, any other questions? If there are no other questions, then we'll have public comment. Catherine?
Couple points. I support training an existing staff member and purchasing a truck. You can hire a truck driver with a Class B license, but do they have all the necessary specific SAM skills that are needed? Knowledge of our district and so on. I think you do well to invest in your staff. We've been lucky, this has been a dry year so far.
Really?
I note that the staff report that's in the packet is almost a year old, so we've been putting this off. I didn't see any analysis of the increased productivity that you would get from labor savings, for instance, in reduced time that a truck can provide, a Vector kind of truck can provide, or the increased productivity for this speeding up these projects so that you can have get other work done in the district. I didn't see any analysis of the risks of injury to crew, workers' comp kinds of savings, and I didn't see those kinds of analysis in just being able to do a better job with them. I've watched these trucks in Pacifica, they are absolutely amazing. So we have, I'm assuming that in the remaining projected expenditures in the sheet that was handed out earlier, there was $1,417,540 left in remaining expenditures. I'm assuming since this was discussed in June of last year, that it would be in this year's budget. So it seems to me that it would be a worthwhile expenditure for Sam to be able to increase the productivity of our crew, do a better job at the projects we do, reduce workers' comp costs or liabilities or risks, however you want to put it. And it also gives an opportunity to train some of our crew members and bring in younger crew members to move them up. I think overall it's a win for the district, or for the agency, and I hope you go ahead with it. Thank you.
Thank you. One more public comment.
And I'd like to respond.
Yes.
The primary purpose of the Vector is that currently we flush the debris down the pipes and we have, looks like a little rake that catches solids, and then we pull out the solids. And the grit in the pipe continues, and the grit causes a lot of issues in the system. What the Vector does is it allows you to decant that grit and the solid, to pull out the solids, but also pull out the grit after it's decanted. That's the primary purpose of the Vector. You know, there could be efficiency, depends on where you use it, but the primary purpose is really to be more modern in sewer cleaning methods in terms of catching solids and removing them from the pipe.
So then that stuff would get put into the dumpster that goes to the,
So through the chair, we have the funds for it, or we don't?
We do, we have them in
Okay.
reserves.
Wait, hold on, we have one more before we discuss it. One more public comment. Tim Costello?
Oh,
About,
Oh, Tim's here.
I'm here. No, I actually had a comment about the draft, but I was gonna wait until you guys were done.
Until item 9.
Oh, 9, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh,
I know it's after the fact, but
Okay,
I
no,
didn't
no,
realize it was
okay.
on the agenda, so.
All right, okay, so, number 9. Okay, so, now discussion. Okay, who was talking last?
I was just curious if we had funding for the truck.
Yeah.
yeah, it's on this sheet here. It's,
Because last time I thought I heard we didn't have funding.
well, but there's a line item on this sheet.
We have a
under
reserve, we have reserves held for that truck.
Okay.
Another in the bank, waiting to be spent on it.
Okay, Rick?
I hate to ask this question, but I have to ask this
Yeah.
question, is this the, spending $300,000 on this versus other things we could do, is this the most important use of our next $300,000? And so I guess open it to the board and to Vivian.
Jim, can I read a bit out of Chuck's email on this?
You just talk.
It answers that question. He says the agency managers have been discussing a new collections agreement with Sam for the past year and a half. It outlines the scope of duties for Sam. Integral to that discussion was the purchase of a larger Vector/jetting cleaning truck. The existing smaller trucks don't sufficiently clean the sewer mains. And then he goes into the MOU considerations and all that stuff. But the key part of this, for this part of the discussion is where he says the current trucks don't do it and we need a bigger truck.
Montero's engineer identifies this as, he's broken it down into priorities, 1, 2, 3, and 4, going from high to low. And one of the high priorities is the purchase of the Vector.
And I would like to point out that, from my casual observation, oh shoot, I forgot, when we were doing consent, I had an item on the collection system, we skipped over that. There's a correction that we need to make in the collection system, part of the manager's report. My gut feeling from looking at these collection system reports month after month is that the overflows within the 8-member agency systems track somewhat with the amount of cleaning that's done. And so, you know, if we want to target getting to 0 overflows, then we need to do better, meaning usually more cleaning.
Okay. Right, was this item budgeted for this year? This is on the budget then?
It was included in the budget, was it, Tony? We have reserves for it, I don't know.
We already have the money for it.
Pardon?
We already have the money for it. We had planned to buy a smaller truck years ago,
Oh,
some years ago, and so, but we didn't, and we have the money for that,
okay, so we have the money budgeted this year, so.
or whatever.
Can I make a comment to Director Warren? So sewer system management involves cleaning, but it's a multifaceted program. Cleaning is only one aspect, and cleaning, if you have a bad pipe, will actually continue to damage bad pipe. So you can, there's a feeling that more cleaning means less SSOs, but you can't look at sewer system management, you know, with those glasses. You have to look at CCTV inspection, repairs, cleaning, source control. And that is actually part of what we're trying to address in this new O&M agreement, but I just wanted to clarify that comment.
No, it's not in this email from Chuck, but he's also said that we need a better camera that can look to the side. Is that gonna be included on this truck?
That's a specialty thing.
It's certainly,
before
it's certainly
we
a
place-
Montero interest as well.
Before we place the order, that question needs to be resolved, because I think we need a better camera. And Chuck says so, and Scott's saying that, and Clemens says so.
Yeah, I thought
We
we
have,
talked about that.
we have budgeted in this year's budget, and we're planning to spend that budget before the end of the fiscal year, a camera that you can attach to the end of your
Okay.
cleaning.
But
We
can,
discussed that.
with
Not
the
a pan and
potential
tilt,
of a
that's a
side
$350,000 truck. But it's a camera that you can attach to your cleaning nozzle, so when you go in, you can tell, did you get it all out or
I
not?
think the agency managers want a camera that can look to the side and look at the laterals.
I think we probably need to have a deliberate discussion on this point, because I know
Yeah.
Clemens and Pippin have an interest in being able to look sideways.
Right.
Now, I mean, this could be done with a panoramic lens or some other way to do it, that's one thing, but I hadn't heard anything along the lines of that kind of expense to do this, so maybe we need to discuss that to see why we're not on the same page on that.
I think it would be wonderful to have.
I would support Vivian's comments, and I think we all know this. I mean, it's not doing any one thing. We can't just do more cleaning.
Yeah.
But I mean, just looking over Newton Engineering's number ones, I mean, they're all over. You know, what we do as an agency is not just the Vector. I just mentioned that one because that one was one where Newton Engineering went and said, yeah, that's a number one, along with these other things.
So through the chair, to the staff. So I think what I'm hearing from staff is that we've got the money. It sounds like even though the truck has some limitations because of its size, it's a good investment. The one issue that I have a concern about is if you don't have two Class B people constantly, the truck could end up sitting around half the time. So would the plan be to have that truck constantly in use by having multiple Class B operators?
No, because you would need two crews. So the discussion at the manager's meeting was the truck, it can't access a lot of the areas with, you know, the hills and the narrow streets. So the truck would sit in the yard part of the time, and that would be the cost of doing business.
So I mean, the truck could hit X% of the lines on the coast. And then maybe next time staff needed to come back with maybe a smaller truck that's better fitted for the hilly areas, so that we have modern, up-to-date equipment that can be used. My concern would be that it's sitting in the yard half the time vacant. It's a shame to spend $300,000 and it's only getting half used.
There's other things we could use it for. It'd be very handy to, you go and clean pump stations, they get floating material on the top
Yeah.
and set it at the bottom. It'd be nice to be able to just go completely clean them out till they're dry and start over.
It's really good for SSO response if you want to recover flow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, hold on there, Rick. So then, to my previous question, I got two comments on it, which is this $300,000 an important $300,000 to spend versus other things we might spend it on? I got two comments. I'd like to hear Ellen, and I'd like to hear Vivian's opinion on that as well. No pressure.
You want to hear mine
Go ahead,
first?
Vivian.
Well, if we're talking about big picture, there are a lot of things that are needed. And if you could fund them, it would be great to have all of it. It'd be great. You know, the Vector is very important. To flush grit down your system, you have issues with your force mains, they're caused by grit. So there are a lot of downstream effects that the agency's dealing with and paying for because we aren't taking that stuff out of the system.
In other words, it could save us money on the back end.
It could save, yeah, it could save you money in that regard.
So to speak.
You know, is it more important? You never know till something breaks. So,
Okay, that's fair.
yeah.
Okay, all right, any other discussion?
My understanding of the comment about the hills and the trucks was that it was the trailer attachment to the existing truck that would be a problem in the hills. So it's not that this bigger truck would be a problem in the hills.
We think we can get the bigger truck up into the Highlands, but we wouldn't wanna do it with a trailer on the back of it.
Right, that's what I thought I understood, so I wanted to clarify that.
There's some pretty steep hills up there.
So you're saying it can hit a high percentage of the area on the coast?
Yeah, and there's other issues with pipes that aren't deep in the ground, so you wanna use a smaller truck for that type of thing, so.
And I think that
There's
would be then,
advantages to both.
that'd be plan B, later you come back with what you're gonna supplement with. So I have to say, what I'm hearing, I'd say, let's go ahead and give it.
Yeah, I do too, but, and when it's idle, can we not rent it out for yard work?
It can actually be used to take up asphalt and dig trenches, so, you know.
Seriously?
It's,
So,
You can vacuum up asphalt?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's.
broken up
gotta be
asphalt,
kidding.
not bonded asphalt, broken asphalt.
Well, but
So
still,
I,
Just don't get too close.
so I'm
It's,
with, and a rare occasion of agreement, I agree with Director Alafano.
what's the remaining lifetime on the
Make a
truck
note
we
of
have
that.
now? So we'll still
Yeah,
have
that's
two, right?
Well, yeah, we have two now, one of them's pretty old, I think it needs to cycle out. The other one, it seems to be doing all right.
But I mean, this will replace one and we will still have two.
We will have
when this-
two.
Okay.
So I'd like to
Okay.
move that we direct staff to proceed with the acquisition of the Vector and with getting a Class B license in-house.
Cameron?
I think
That
that
should
is
be
a
a
separate
separate-
discussion, because we don't really
Yeah.
know
That's not
what we're
on the
talking
agenda.
about with the camera.
Well, getting a Vector with a camera, we could certainly fit that within the agenda item, but I'm reluctant to do that until our respective staffs talk with staff here and see if we can't get on the same page.
But I'm reluctant to buy the truck without final resolution of the camera issue.
With the direction that our respective staffs meet and discuss this particular item,
The ones that
and if there's a way to satisfy everybody by doing it with the purchase of the one Vector or the one vacuum, if there's a way to do it,
We'll find it.
we'll authorize you to proceed under this item. That's all I'm doing. is-
Right. We'll
So-
keep, yeah.
That was,
I-
that was lengthy, but it looks like Susie got it.
Does that,
Susie got it?
what do we agree to here? What is the,
Yeah.
So-
can you please restate the motion?
Directing staff to proceed with the acquisition of the truck and to have a discussion with staff at respective agencies about the camera. And if they find agreement and it would fit within the budget to make it part of the acquisition of the truck, go ahead and do it.
I'm good with that.
Can I?
All right,
Do we have a
we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I
Any discussion?
want to ask for potentially just clarification of the language in the motion. I hope this is just clarification of the language, that the intent of the motion is to get agreement from the agency managers on the camera issue and then order the truck.
Yes.
Is that the intent of your motion?
Yeah.
And if they find a way, as I said in the second restating while you were trying to get in,
Why are we?
if they find a way to get it done in the acquisition of the truck, go ahead and do it.
Okay, so
So come back to us if you find a way to get it
any
done.
more discussion?
Yeah, I have a discussion.
Yeah.
And if they don't find a way, they still order the truck.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah, that is certainly my intention.
Yes.
Okay,
Aye.
okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yes.
Okay, passed unanimously.
Have fun shopping.
Okay, so let's go on to the next item, which is item number 6, interim manager's report. Vivian?
Don't forget, I want to go back to the one item on the manager's report on.
We'll talk, well, maybe, but let's go ahead and on with the agenda. Vivian?
Okay, so I'll make this brief because I know there's a number of the public here waiting to talk on an item. So just some updates that we haven't discussed earlier. Under collection system activities, we have a draft O&M agreement, and the managers, one of the managers has asked to have it placed on hold and then have the new manager take a look at it and continue the discussion, so we're gonna do that.
I'm sorry, would you repeat that, Vivian? I'm sorry.
We have developed collectively an O&M agreement between Sam, an example O&M agreement between Sam and Half Moon Bay, and I know Chuck
Oh, number
Duffy,
collections.
collections. So Chuck Duffy and Clemens have seen it, and Clemens had requested that we put that on hold until the new manager comes in
Okay,
and provides his own expertise.
okay.
there was a mention of the Clean Beaches Initiative grant, so I just wanted to give you an update on that. We submitted a grant for a project related to Pillar Point Harbor, which is ranked D or F on the Clean Beaches list. The grant was conditionally accepted, so there was discussion about the match, and apparently if it's collection system only, it's a 75% match, not a 50% match. And so, my discussion with the state board was that it's very unlikely, and this was maybe speaking out of turn, so speaking for the agency, but I think it's very unlikely that the agency could come up with a 75% match. I mean, we would basically be asked to provide 75% of cost of a project that we would not really plan to do for a long time. They wouldn't want it done in a short amount of time, and it's that what we want to do is focus all of our resources on this one project to get that grant as opposed to other things that needed to be done. So they said, well, okay, you know, because you have to show that you have the 75% in hand. They said, well, if Sam can't fund 75%, because part of the grant related to collection system improvements is an overall, a holistic approach to reducing I&I, would the members, in particular, Montera and Grand Sanitary District, be interested in piggybacking on this grant application to do collection system work for a 25% match? And I told them I would discuss it with the managers. So just to let you know, I've sent out phone calls, I haven't heard back. I've sent out a phone call to the Granada Sanitary District manager, I haven't talked to the Montera manager yet. Haven't heard back.
Did you explain that there's effectively no difference between member agency money and SAM money? You know, SAM money only comes from the member agencies.
Right. Well, so the difference is that if we were to do a pump station replacement, the dollar amount is large. So to provide a 75% match for a large dollar amount, you're providing a lot of cash up front. If we're looking at collection system improvements, the dollar amount can be adjusted to an amount that could be afforded if the member agencies want to do that work. SAM doesn't own the collection system, so we couldn't submit an application for the collection system. They offered that option because we already have this first application in. So I'll be discussing that in more detail with the managers. And it's just an option that they've offered because the initial application was already submitted, so it would require very little work to put in that request.
Are you familiar with the RCD report? So, you know,
Yeah.
basically, there's virtually no human component. It's mostly wildlife of one form or
Right.
another.
Right.
And it's really outside both SAM and the member agency's jurisdiction. You know, we're willing to take it on if they provide 100% funding.
Well, and
Because
so
it's not our responsibility.
there's no nexus, we're providing no linkage whatsoever in the application between the sewer system and the RCD findings. Because the findings did say that the bacteria was predominantly non-human. It is only if you have a sewer system overflow and the overflow reaches the water, that there would be an impact, a temporary impact. And that is the impact we're saying that we would like to have grant funding to reduce. So it's only the impact related to an SSO. And so they're willing to provide 25% funding if improvements to the collection systems will be made with that.
All right, Vivian, go ahead and finish your report.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's see what else we had. Budget preparation we've already talked about. And I have anticipated items for the April agenda, but we have a few more from today's discussion. So other than that, I have no further report.
Okay, we have a comment from the audience. Catherine?
I have no comment.
Okay. All right, and any further discussion or questions for Vivian? Okay, then we'll go on to attorney's report. Jim?
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and then any director's reports? And Leonard, you can bring up your other item if you want at this point. But anybody else first? Director's reports?
I'd just like to mention, I shared your last attorney's report with our attorney, Dave Stricker, and that was some really good stuff. Thank you for that.
Okay, Leonard Warren, you wanted to bring up
Okay,
that other item?
I'm looking for the page that has the little rolling 12-month average in the upper left corner. Anybody tell me real quick which page that is?
35,
35?
there it is.
Now I'm not seeing the page numbers on the part I just flipped to.
It's on the side, actually on that page.
Oh. Okay, in the upper left corner quadrant, the February 2014, oh, that's not the moving total. Yeah, the single month numbers, Half Moon Bay is zeros all the way down, and then a 1 for other, and then a 0%, and GSD is zeros all the way down and 100%, and then MWSD is zeros all the way down and 0%. So I didn't realize that the totals were entered by hand instead of a spreadsheet, so somebody forgot to move the percent numbers.
Sorry about that.
So can
I'll
we
update it for the
get
next
that, we'll call it a typo, can we get that corrected?
Okay, all right. Thank you, Leonard. And any other directors' reports? All right, let's go on to public comment. Yes.
The annual snapshot day is the first Saturday in May, and every year I try and drum up volunteers, because the team of Tony and me, it works better if you have 3 people than 2. So, you know, if we could get 1 more volunteer to step up, that would help. And I think the training is next month on the SAM meeting night, if I recall. It's either tonight or it's next month on SAM meeting night. But, you know, somebody who doesn't have to be here could go to the training, which is in San Gregorio.
I believe so.
So anybody who's interested in it, it's kind of a fun thing to do. You get to visit a number of the water courses that flow to the ocean, and one of the places we sample is Mill Creek, which is kind of a nice hike, and you get to watch Tony stand on the edge of a bridge with no railing. So anybody who might be interested in this, contact Tony or contact me, and we'll send you the information we got.
Okay. When is that again?
I think it's like May 3rd. It's the first Saturday in May.
Okay. All right, May 3rd. All right. So we have a public comment. Tim,
Sir,
you wanted to make a public.
oh, I just had a quick, not necessarily as a member of the public, but as an employee. The personnel policy handbook, this was the first I saw of it. I'd just like to see that after you guys do whatever changes come back to management, that, because just looking at this by itself, the employees aren't gonna know what's changed, what hasn't changed. So if we have like, you know, that highlighted the areas that are different, that would be awesome, because they're gonna see this and they're gonna freak out.
Yeah, we'll come back for your comment.
Were you here for the discussion,
I was here for many discussions.
for the one of this, on the handbook?
Yeah,
He's just asking for the
I
markup.
was, I guess, you know.
You're just
Yeah.
asking for a red line version.
Right.
Red line version.
Perfectly
Because
reasonable
in
request.
summary, almost everything is taken exactly from the documents, just saying that, but we can highlight anything.
Yeah, I think it would just be easy for the employees so that they know when they're looking at it. They just don't
We
think
can
that.
highlight.
Okay,
all
okay, Tim.
Yeah.
Transparency.
Okay, that's good.
So I would, so Tim, thanks for your comment, and my comment is, I think red line is one approach. I think it's not appropriate for this. I think it's appropriate to share, here's the handbook, and here's what's different, and it's 6 bullet points of what's different, and you can read the whole handbook, but this is what's new, and it's very concise.
Yeah, this is a new document, so we couldn't really redline it.
I see, so then then in that case, we need to do here's a summary of what's in here, and now you can go read it, but this is to kind of explain what it is before you go through the 22 pages of what it is.
That makes sense.
And at a minimum, the old and the new.
Mhm.
Okay, all right.
You see where I'm going with that, though.
Okay, Tim.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, and I have a slip for Catherine?
No comment.
Okay, all right. And then, okay, so the oral communication. All right.
right, if none, we're going to have a recess and then open a closed session, public employee appointment. Government Code Section 54957B1, title, General Manager, after we